October 2020 brings Airshow dispatches back to Duxford for their third showcase day of the year and our final event of the series. Following the cancellation of the Battle of Britain Airshow, Showcase Day number 3 was the final chance for the Imperial War Museum to commemorate the battle's 80th anniversary in the air. And they did so in style, with a 5-ship tail chase sequence featuring a pair of Hurricanes and a trio of Spitfire Mark 1As. But those weren't the only aircraft of that era. The organisers gave us several unusual formations, including a combination of Catalina and Dragon Rapide and a pair of P-51 Mustangs flying with a Hispano Buchon. This is our pick of the action. Hello and welcome back to the Imperial War Museum Duxford for the second time this series, but under rather sad circumstances, for this is Duxford's last hurrah of the year following the cancellation of their Battle of Britain airshow, and just a few weeks before the UK was plunged into a second national lockdown. And our regular viewers will know all about the showcase days here at Duxford, for we covered their first show of the year back in August. That's Series 3 Episode 2 if you want to give it a watch. And as with that episode, we start with some of the unofficial flying movements that took place throughout the morning. Just a very brief look though, as there was very little flying, thanks in part to the terrible weather that we endured for much of the day. And here's James Hepner in his Extra 300L, part of the main flying display, but a performance that we featured in that earlier Duxford episode, so we won't be looking at it in any detail today. So, on to the first of our main flying acts now, and that is a very unusual formation of Dragon Rapide and Catalina. These are both aeroplanes we've seen earlier in the series, and I did say last episode that I'd tell you about the story of John Cruikshank the next time we saw the Catalina. That was before I knew it would be displaying alongside the Dragon Rapide, so we'll save that story for another time. We're seeing the aircraft grouped together because they are the only twin-engined aeroplanes in the flying display. So let's talk about those engines. The Catalina has two R1830 Twin Wasp Radial engines. That's an engine manufactured by Pratt & Whitney from 1932 onwards. It's been built in huge numbers because, as well as the Catalina, it powers aircraft such as the C-47 Dakota, the B-24 Liberator, the Grumman Wildcat, and even some British aircraft as well, the Short Sunderland and the Vickers Wellington, for example. This specific aircraft has actually had some pretty severe engine problems since this show, which left it stranded on Loch Ness in Scotland. But luckily, Miss Pickup has now been removed from the lake, and sufficient funds to the tune of £20,000 have been raised for her to be repaired. And the Dragon Rapide is powered by the Gypsy 6, one of de Havilland's own power plants designed and produced in-house. This was built in relatively small numbers, just over 1,100 compared to the Twin Wasp's 173,000, and it was fitted to such aircraft as the Percival Mew Gull and the de Havilland Comet. It produces just 200 horsepower, which is only 1/6 of the power produced by the Twin Wasp. And another reason we're seeing aeroplanes flying in unusual combinations is to save time, because the organisers knew the weather was going to be immensely challenging on the 10th of October. They actually ended up timing it perfectly. The rain eased off around about half an hour before the start of the flying display, and it started picking up again just as the last aircraft touched down. So a wonderful piece of timing and choreography on the part of the Flying Control Committee. Following that, this Belgium-based Bell 47 flown by the Dutchman Peter Kuipers, and he's someone we've seen displaying over the skies of Duxford many times, most commonly at the helm of the locally based B-17G Flying Fortress Sally B. But that aeroplane has been grounded all year. There simply weren't enough air shows for it to be worth getting her into the air, so instead we've seen Peter displaying several other types. He flew the Yak 50 at Showcase Day 1, for example, and here it's the Bell 47. This classic American helicopter design can trace its roots back to 1945. It was the first helicopter to be certified for civilian use, but it also saw military service under the designation H-13 Sioux, serving with 36 nations, primarily in the observation role, although it was also used for training, search and rescue, and VIP transport. In the civilian world, it was used very much like any other light helicopter for personal transport and pleasure flights, but it was also employed for agricultural duties, and it was a Bell 47 that became the world's first live TV news helicopter. They were used to train NASA astronauts for the Apollo moon landings as well, so a multi-purpose design indeed. The first fighters of the day starting up for their display now. apologise for having to shout over the engines of the Catalina for much of this performance, but following that lovely opening formation pass, we go into a solo display from the Hispano Buchon. The Spanish license-built version of the Messerschmitt Bf 109G, although here painted in the colours of the Luftwaffe. Recognised as one of the best and most advanced aircraft in the early years of the Second World War, but now being challenged by the Mustangs. P-51D Mustang Miss Helen, that's the designation of the Mustang during the Second World War, and TF-51D Contrary Mary, designated in accordance with the American post-war military aircraft designation system. T for trainer, indicating this is a two-seat dual-control aeroplane, and F for fighter, of course. It's time, I think, for a little bit more engine chat, because once again we have a combination of aircraft grouped by engine type, this time a trio of radial engine designs. And it'd be remiss of me not to talk about those power plants, particularly given, once again, we've already seen these individual aircraft earlier in the series. So powering the Harvard is a Pratt & Whitney R1340 Wasp, a predecessor of the twin Wasp we heard about earlier with the Catalina, and that's a roughly 600 horsepower piece of kit used in quite a number of aircraft types, but aside from the T6, mostly designs that were never produced in particularly large numbers. There's a Wright Continental R975 Whirlwind in the Yale, again mainly used by less successful designs of aeroplanes, and that produces a little over 400 horsepower. And in the Beaver, another member of the Pratt & Whitney Wasp family, this time an R985 Wasp Junior, and this is an AN variant producing some 300 horsepower. Most later versions produced 450. And we arrive now at the centrepiece of Showcase Day number 3, the Battle of Britain display. 3 Spitfire Mark 1s and 2 Hurricanes, one of which, our 4118, is a genuine Battle of Britain veteran. It was 80 years ago, between the 10th of July and the 31st of October 1940, that the Battle of Britain raged over the English Channel and southern England as the Luftwaffe attempted to wipe out the Royal Air Force and pave the way for German invasion. It didn't work. It was Germany's first significant military defeat of the war, but it was not without sacrifice. (1,547) Allied aircraft were lost, along with 522 airmen. For Germany, the death toll was well over 3,000. Following the cancellation of the Battle of Britain Airshow, this was one of the year's biggest commemorations and celebrations of the few, the roughly 3,000 airmen that fought and won the battle, most of them British, but also including 574 pilots from 15 nations, Poland, Canada, New Zealand and Czechoslovakia among them. Many had never seen combat before. Their average age was just 20, and their life expectancy was 4 weeks. Evocative scenes, sights and sounds, all against the backdrop of this dramatic autumnal sky. And you can see a longer video of this display without my narration on our YouTube channel. It is a fitting way in this Battle of Britain anniversary year to bring to a close Series 3 of Airshow Dispatches. Next year we'll be at airshows again, don't know where, don't know when, but hopefully it shall indeed be a sunny day. Goodbye for now.